This show is brought to you in association with 5 Stars Promotions. To find out all about 5 Stars' latest events, including many featuring ex-Rangers heroes, then please visit them on Twitter at 5 Stars Limited, that's at 5 numeric 5 Stars Ltd, or search for them on Facebook. Welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast, the podcast that knows how you're feeling. This week on Heart and Hand, to quote Blackadder, I made a note in my diary before beginning today. It said simply, bugger. So, welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name is David Edgar. I'm your host as always. And joining me this week are two of my very favourite podders. First of all, the delectable Mr. Martyn Ramsey.
Hi, David. How you doing?
And the wonderful Mr. James Forrest.
Good afternoon, David. Good afternoon, Martyn.
Now, let's not try and sugarcoat it. Yesterday was an almighty kick in the George Dawes, Martyn.
Yeah, that's, I think, the way everyone's feeling. Just now, it felt good getting into it, even though the points dropped in Aberdeen. I think you could put that down to a kind of slackness, thinking the game was done. There was no way that was going to be the case. Yesterday, the atmosphere was superb, certainly on the Rangers end it was, despite the weather, despite the loss of Davis. I just felt, very, very in it. And there's ways to lose cup finals, and Rangers have found another one.
Yeah, a pretty painful way, because I think recent bad experiences at Hampden, James, have been Rangers turning up and not playing well. And the worst part is yesterday they did, up until unfortunately the most important part of it, which is putting the ball into the back of the net, where we did everything but. And of course, when that happens in games, it's not unique to us. It happens in any league that you watch all around the world. If you don't take your chances, it's amazing how often the other team pop up with one, and that's enough to get them over the line. And I think that was the frustration among Rangers fans, is that we say things before a game like, "Oh, we want for you to leave everything out in the pitch and give 100%." Well, they did do that, and we're still gutted.
I don't think there was many, if any, Rangers fans who were particularly afraid of the challenge yesterday, because this Hampden thing that ended with the way that we played against Hearts in the semi-final, and there was a real sense of excitement going into the game, especially when the two lineups were announced. I think we were a lot happier with the lineup that we put out than what they were with their starting lineup. As Martyn says, the atmosphere was absolutely electric, particularly being there and being in amongst the Rangers fans and singing way beforehand. We, I think, felt a lot more excited about the game than what they did, and I think it showed. And I think we, as a support, did everything we could to really back the team. But to be honest, the team did respond to that, because we did play well. It's just we couldn't put the ball in the back of the net, and sadly, that's what games are decided on.
Let's put the elephant in the room into the middle of it. Martyn, Rangers, I'm always impressed with Rangers fans in the way that we react to refereeing controversy. We don't immediately phone up a private investigator. We don't feel the need to wreck the guy's life, and we tend to look at our own part in things a lot more. And that happened yesterday, and it happened against Aberdeen. And quite rightfully, I've used the phrase myself. I checked back my messages yesterday. I said it's our own fault. We had enough chances to win the game, etc., etc. But this morning I did watch the game. There were 6 major decisions in the match, and the officials got 2 of them correct. They got the penalty award for Rangers correct, and they got the red card for Frimpong correct. However, the ones they got wrong were the goal, which was offside, and quite clearly offside. I don't believe for a second the linesman can be given really any excuse on that one. Then there was a penalty missed on Alfredo Morelos. There was another yellow card tackle that was that should have been a red for Callum McGregor. And finally, there was the penalty on Alfredo Morelos and the one that he missed. Sorry, I'm missing one, which was the retake with Fraser Forster being actually closer to the Celtic end when the kick was taken. Now, look, as I say, I'm proud that we react in a certain way, but I do wonder if sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot with this, because 6 decisions, 2 correct, and in the end, as bad as Rangers' finishing was, the worst Rangers should have had out of that yesterday was a 0-0 draw with 2 missed penalties, one of which had been taken twice. That's what should have happened at the end of that match yesterday. The manager has spoken about a need for VAR up here. My concern with that is there much point? If you've just got another referee sitting in a truck who's too scared to give a decision, then what's the point of that?
Yeah, there's ways of doing it that don't come across all very Super Scoreboard 1990s. I mean, even Gerrard coming out, if he did before the game and said, referee had to apologise for an error on Wednesday, I don't, I very much hope that no one will have to offer me an apology this weekend. There's ways of doing it. It happens in all leagues. If you take yourself out of this very myopic relationship we have in this country, managers play that game all the time, and of course we could box a hell of a lot smarter in terms of that. It wasn't the best refereeing display. There's a couple of listeners behind me will be able to testify. You shout at just about every decision in Old Firm game. It's just the way that it is. But there were a couple of clear ones that obviously proved decisive. I think in slow motion, when you've got lines on the park, those 3 are clear. I'm not entirely sure in real time how simple that is. I think there is a pressure. It's easier to award that goal or not raise your flag than to raise your flag if it's Celtic. I totally get that. But VAR does take that out, because then someone making that decision can go, look, there is a line. Someone has crossed that line. I can disallow the goal. But I'm not going to go down that road, because I think listeners know exactly how I feel about all that. It just added to the frustration of a day that started with a lot of purpose and a lot of impetus and a great deal of endeavour, and our midfield 3, who I feared for without Davis being there. I thought they were very good, especially in the first half. But you just know as time goes on, when you haven't scored, you just know what's around the corner.
Do you think, speaking about that, the way that we don't question decisions, in the main, obviously individual fans do, and you just need to look at social media for that, but I think collectively it's not something... Is it because we define ourselves against the fact that they do, and therefore that's a Celtic thing, we don't do that?
It is. And listen, we'll talk about it in more detail probably as the show develops, but yesterday I've seen that film just in negative.
Yeah,
we have seen that is every Old Firm game in the 90s that I watched, away from Ibrox, really. With
a slight difference, though, that in those games Walter set out to sit in and hit on the break, and Celtic didn't do that yesterday.
Yeah, they snatched whatever they could. Well, one shot and goal. And Gerrard was right. I mean, to come back to your point about that is why we don't do it. I think there's a cuter way of doing it, as I said before. We don't have the political muscle within the footballing authorities. We don't have the political muscle within the media. So statements won't work. And I know how much some fans demand a statement, and Celtic make statements. They do on the back of all the political power you could possibly want within a footballing institution. It will have weight. We don't. But we certainly, Gerrard has a lot of stature in this game. And could possibly be cute about it. But yes, the reason we don't is because we define ourselves in a very different way, which it isn't playing the game at hand. But in his comments about that post-match, the first thing that Gerrard said was we didn't need to give away the free kick. We did. Probably the only mistake our centre-halves made all day. And we should be picking them up, offside or not offside.
Yeah, and look, as I say, much as I'm liking a good moan about the referees, it's not my first instinct either. I do go, aye, but we could have done this and we could have done that. And as I say, I'm kind of proud that we don't go down that road. I wouldn't want us to be. I mean, I certainly don't want to be getting told, right, Davey, it's your shift to go and throw stones at an official's house tonight. And
you don't want private investigators.
No, you don't. You don't want to go down that route.
Yeah, we could just be, as I say, especially in build-ups, just a bit cuter about how we do it. Or we could just have that, and that's all.
Yeah, and then get rid of it. Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I think that's a decent shout. But James, right, referee cost us. He did, right? And with that accepted, let's move on to what we could have done a bit better. Nothing much except score. And unfortunately, Alfie's nightmare against Celtic continues. Alfie had a really good game from a striking point of view, except, unfortunately, for the most important part of it. He ran their defence ragged. They couldn't handle him. He kept popping up and making chances and getting chances. But none of that matters. If he'd had an awful game and put 2 away, we'd all be feeling a lot happier.
After the game, I felt like Morelos probably let us down because he didn't put the ball in the net. I actually want to retract that thought now, because you're right, he did play really, really well, apart from the thing that he's there in the park mainly to do, which is score the goal. I thought the build-up play from us was really good. I thought the midfield three, in an attacking sense, that we were playing the right kind of passes. I was maybe disappointed that Ryan Kent didn't get on the ball as much as what I maybe felt he could have been. I don't know whether that's necessarily his fault or the fact that the ball just never went his way. I thought Aribo, I've seen a lot of criticism from him. I actually thought he looked pretty decent, especially in the first half, maybe faded a bit in the second half, but I thought he was getting involved in a lot of the play, passing it, to Tavernier on the right quite a lot and playing very good balls in that respect. I thought the crossing from both fullbacks was better than what it's maybe been of late in the first half, but it's that thing again. Once the goal goes in and the team certainly go into that panic stage, particularly after the missed penalty.
Yeah, after the missed penalty, they lost their head and they lost their shape and their discipline, and they started to lump the ball into the box, where Celtic's giant goalkeeper and centre backs were quite happy to deal with that.
Decision making just wasn't there at that point, and we make substitutes that I thought the substitutions yesterday, as much as we were chasing the game and we were, having to do what we could to try and get that goal back, I'm always a bit reticent of you sacrifice a midfielder for a forward, because there were one or two occasions where they were catching us on the break, and it could have been a lot worse had it not been for McGregor making a save or them missing a glaring opportunity.
I get that, but also it is a cup final, and you've got to try and get the goal. You've got Jermaine Defoe there. You get him on the park somehow. You're not going to take Alfie off, are you? So, I do understand that. Martyn, we will come back to the substitutes, but something that James mentioned there, which was the penalty, and of course, that's really the kick in the teeth. Had Rangers, I think, just lost without that, it would have been still enormously painful, but not quite as bad. It was the fact that I think anybody realistically watching that game felt if he puts that away, we will win. Them down to 10 men, Rangers on top, we would have won the game, I think. But we'll never know, and I'm not putting it forward as an argument, but I think that is why it feels so painful. There was a bit of talk all over social media, and a lot of fans seemed to blame Tavernier for it. Now, the manager said afterwards he'd made the change. It was his decision. Some fans don't believe him on that. I kind of find it a little bit strange that people have been calling for Tav to be taken off penalties, me among them. He's taken off penalties because the guy that got put on them missed. I don't necessarily think that can be Tav's fault.
No. I think there's a bit of a visual symbolism in the fact that the captain literally handed the ball over to him, and it's that very physical handing over of duties that maybe in the heat of the moment, and imagine the emotions which were rather heightened at that moment in time. And you're right, that is a defining moment of the game, possibly the season, possibly more than that. If it had been agreed beforehand, then surely Morelos takes the ball pretty quickly. And there is no fanning about, and we get on with it. I think that, and I don't have an issue with him handing it over anyway. If someone's not feeling it, the responsibility, the real leadership, is to give the ball to someone who wants to strike it as hard as fuck into the back of the net. So I've got no issue with that. A pre-arranged decision, I don't know why he's sitting with the ball in his hand, and there seems to be a bit of to me to you. So no, I don't have any issue with the captain in that regard. It's just it wasn't the best optic on that very moment.
Yeah, it was. But again, I just think a lot of the stuff that came out yesterday was venting, I think, and a lot of the criticism was scattergun. You saw an awful lot of things being said that I'm sure people in the cold light of day maybe didn't quite mean. I think, to James's point there about Joe Aribo, for example, he was good in the first half. And I know that some people will be saying, "Oh no, he's rotten," because it's a previously held viewpoint that gets brought out when things don't go well. But he was fine yesterday. He was important in helping Rangers dominate that first half, which we utterly did. And unfortunately, as I say, Alfie just had a nightmare. What does it do for him going forward, James? Because this thing, I mean, it was a thing anyway. I think we were all pretty confident he was going to get one yesterday. It's very hard to imagine him having better chances than at least a couple of them yesterday. It's a difficult one, and unfortunately, again, it's like, you're not going to prove you've got a winning mentality till you win something. You're not going to prove you can do it until you do it. There's really no in between.
Yeah, in terms of what it does for Morelos, I have no doubt that in the next couple of games he's going to get a few goals, because that's what he does. I think what we have to accept now is the Old Firm game for him is a really, really big deal in his head, and you could see that in his body language sometimes. After a few missed opportunities, he kind of went into that slump that we saw a lot more from him last season than this, to be fair to him. He's got a lot better at that, but it is still a habit of his, and I think this kind of game will bring that out in him. I've no doubt he will perform very well for us up until the next time we meet them. What you could say, the lucky thing for our point of view is it's not long until we meet them again, so he has a chance to rectify that, and it would be a rather magnificent way to right that wrong by scoring the winning goal at Parkhead that may well put us back at the top of the league going into the winter break. That's how you can get over that, but it will be all the talk going into it. It's about how he manages himself and how the coaching staff and his teammates around him speak to him and approach him and talk through. But what I don't want to hear is people saying, "Oh, Jermaine Defoe should start that game. Jermaine Defoe should start ahead of Alfredo Morelos." If we're playing our strongest team, Alfredo Morelos is starting no matter what.
On that, Martin, yeah, I haven't seen much from Defoe, and he's a great player, and I'm glad we've got him, and he's very useful to us, but I'm with James on that one. I don't think we've seen much in the games against Celtic that he's played to suggest, go with him instead.
No, I'm not advocating that at all. Back to the substitution issue. No, I did have an issue with that. We're going 4-4-2 and just crossing balls into these giant defenders. Morelos and Defoe don't work. They don't. That's football manager shit. That just chucking numbers up and kind of hoping for the best. If you trust your boy, you keep him on and you affect the supply. If you think he's heads up his arse after the penalty and you want an experienced professional finisher, you swap him. That's not popular. Well, tough shit. That's what managers are paid to do. Those two don't work. Not unless you're 2 or 3 up at home against utter jobbers and they can both maybe fill their boots. We know that doesn't work. We know that 4-4-2 isn't a thing. So why, with possibly the biggest 20 minutes of the season, he decided to do that? I'm not entirely sure. But no, your next game, especially a European game. You know, Morelos starts every day of the week. No one was asking him for Defoe to start yesterday. You and I, David, thought that getting the Hampden goals in the semi-final that afternoon would be a big thing for him, and just knowing what it's like to score there, and I think we're all pretty confident he was going to do the biz yesterday. And you both right, half his game was the normal Morelos that we've come to see, which has been a big leap on last summer. Totally, the improvement this season's been incredible, and half of that was on display yesterday. The harrying, the movement, the positioning. But it was the old. I say old. He's only been here a couple of years, and he's still very young himself. Old firm Morelos, snatching, try to just hit things as hard as possible. Not quite hitting hope, but there's a couple of those efforts from outside the box. It's in his head, this game.
Yeah,
and we don't see what he does in Europe. And don't forget, Europe is crunch, as we use that word. It's still a bit of a free hit. We still get the feeling that, we're maybe ahead of the curve in terms of our progression there. Not really expecting to go to Porto and doing it, not expecting to go to Rotterdam and do anything. So there's still a wee bit of that off the shoulders, and he can just be himself. And whether that's a pressure that he puts on himself or whatever, I'm not entirely sure, but it's almost visible that he's just at that very moment, the acute moment in the match, just wasn't. If that's a final against Hearts or Hibs or whomever, he fills his boots.
Yeah, he gets a hat trick, no problem there. The thing is when people say, he doesn't do it in big games, he clearly does. Rangers will get a cheque for 15 million quid from UEFA at the end of the season because in the 91st minute he popped up against Legia Warsaw. He does. There's no doubt about that. But I'd like to thank you, Martyn, for a wonderful illustration there of Maslow's hierarchy of need, because you're right. I mean, these are big games, but we're Rangers fans. Old Firm games are the biggest. It's that simple. It's not going to change. And logically, we can sit and say, well, Europe is this and that, and it's all true. But emotionally, and therefore the dominant factor in it is we will always go. We would trade 3 of your European goals for one of them yesterday.
Yeah, and it's the Legia one is a perfect example. But it was a big moment, financially for the club and stature and everything else. But we weren't locked in a tussle with Legia Warsaw that we've had a dreadful experience of for now on the best part of a decade. And we know that this game is different. We know that the league is different. We know that the impact of yesterday could have been huge, might still be. We know what the head-to-heads do there. We know that going to Pittodrie and Tynecastle and Easter Road and Kilmarnock and all these places have a big bearing on where the championship goes. And he's done his part in some of those games, and maybe other players still have to do that as well. But this is the big one. Yesterday was the biggest game. We all talked about it before. We can't change our mind now and start to rationalise that away. In terms of a cup final, because we haven't won since 2011, but in terms of a cup final that could have had an impact on them outside the 90 minutes yesterday, you're probably going back to 2002 for that. Mm-hmm. So it was massive. And ultimately, as I said, the endeavour was there, the intent right from the off was there, and they were shit because we made them shit. But ultimately, and Morelos, because of where he plays on the part and the line that he leads, but you can throw Kent into that bargain as well, in the final third, we just didn't look ourselves. We didn't look the way we have looked this season. In some, high-profile games. None more high-profile than this, though. And this is what defines you as a Rangers hero. So what defines you as a great Rangers team, is the ability to win games like this. And as I said, this was a nightmare for me, watching an Old Firm game from the 90s in reverse. And all the same things Celtic fans would say on the open line and tabloid hotlines and whatever else. We're not far away. You just need a couple of signs, need them to make mistakes, blah, blah, blah. And we knew that it was a minute winning mentality. You can't change the rules now because it's not us.
But
and we knew that they just weren't up to it.
I've heard that a lot, and it's a fair point. I used it myself. Yesterday I said, "Christ, we're Tommy Burns and Celtic," and it's true. But the point that was, rather brilliantly expressed as by Andy McGowan was, yeah, but it did work. They did get closer, and they did win that is what's happening. Rangers are progressing. You don't get
Oh,
on
no,
a journey.
there's no question we are progressing. And
Yeah,
there's no question that they progress. If you want to use that Tommy, be careful how far you use the Tommy Burns analogy, because there's one very obvious
and it might happen.
It
might happen here as well. Stephen Gerrard might be John the Baptist, not Jesus Christ. That is a possibility, but again, you're not going to get on your journey by just deciding to go on it. You need to make the direction of travel, and I think Rangers are very much doing that. No, I don't for a say anyone who say, we're not progressing. That's just bullshit. We're not progressing quickly as we want to 100%, but no, I don't buy into that at all. James, one thing though I do have criticism of the manager for, and people who listen to this will know that I'm a big Stevie G fan, but if there is one thing that does annoy me, it's his use of substitutions. I don't think he uses them quickly enough. I don't think he's bold enough in his decisions, and then occasionally the ones that he does make puzzle me. Ojo at Pataudry, for one, being really the only attacking change. Yesterday, Katic came on for Helander. That was an injury. Take that side, right? It's the other two. The Defoe one, I kind of understood. I was wrong, incidentally. But Martyn and you were correct in why it didn't work and why it wasn't going to work. I accept, but I was doing the football manager thing of just chuck a striker on. But the one I didn't get at all was Brandon Barker, who, in all honesty, hasn't shown much of anything at all. His best game for Rangers came, let's be honest, in a kind of defensive shift that he had to put in Porto. As an attacker, he's shown very, very little. He was put on towards the end, whereas Greg Stewart, who the manager does seem to rate, well, he's definitely the lowest of all the wide options or attacking options, yet got a couple of goals against Aberdeen, got a couple of goals against Hearts recently. To me, that's the one I turn to, and instead the manager turns to someone who hasn't shown anything to deserve to be there, and of course was, in all honesty, looked kind of very bad when he was out there.
Yes, the only thing you can point to is, well, Brandon Barker's quick, and we want to try and use that speed to...
Is he, though? I remembered him as being quick. I'm not sure that this isn't like a kind of false memory. I don't recall since he signed for us any real scintillating burst of pace. There was a couple of times yesterday he's up against a tired fullback and knocked it past them, and the guy beat him to it. I don't know. I keep hearing he's quick. My belief was from his time at Hibs he was quick. I'm not necessarily sure he is.
He's quicker than Greg Stewart, I think.
Well, that's true, yeah.
Yeah, but I think what you're saying is fair, and I think of the options that we had available for wanting to go for speed, he would have maybe brought on Shea Ojo, but I think there would have been a riot amongst the Rangers support had Ojo been brought on in that scenario, which is sad, but I think that's the reputation that he's beginning to get now. Substitutions is something that, I mean, you remember last season, it took Steven Gerrard sometimes to the 80th minute when we needed to do something different before he would actually make a change, and that was incredibly frustrating. We felt that he maybe learned from that, but yeah, that is a fault of, and let's not just say on Steven Gerrard, it's the whole coaching staff, I think, that they need to be quicker off the mark and say, right, if this is not working, what can we do better? I heard one or two people say that we possibly got exposed for our lack of real depth and quality, and that maybe because of squads we've had recently, it feels maybe that we have more strength and depth than what we perhaps do have. You could possibly look at yesterday, and when you're saying that your best option to come off the bench is either Brandon Barker or Greg Stewart, and I think the vast majority of us would have said Greg Stewart. And it was the same with Aberdeen as well. No idea why he doesn't come on when he's on that rich vein of form. And if he comes on and he gets a goal in that game, it wouldn't have surprised me had he possibly got the call to start the game on Sunday. Trust in the squad a bit more, I think. Rebo always seemed destined to start this game because the last couple of games he was playing as that right winger. He was very much being favoured as that option. And once we knew that Stephen Davis wasn't going to play, that felt like the obvious answer. That was what was going to happen. But I think Greg Stewart would have been a better option from the start, let alone then him coming off the bench and offering another goal threat, which Brandon Barker, considering I think, unless I'm mistaken, his only goal coming against Livingston in a game that was I think we're already winning by that point anyway, it is surprising.
I think Barker is quick on a break, David. And I think we understand that Stewart isn't the paciest, but he is. It's what I call a good Ibrox player. He will be helpful to us in pack defences.
Which is what we were up against.
Well, this is what I was going to say. It's almost as if the Barker substitute was kind of preordained with this thought that, well, Celtic will come on to us because, it's a cup final and 9 times champions or 9 times winners for every cup going. They'll come on to us. They'll come on to us. So if we make a sub, it'll be, it's going to be Barker or Rojo because I need pace on that big Hampden pitch and we can counter them. With no discernible appreciation that they are camped in for bed and breakfast here. So we need the players with as much close control as possible because, I don't know if you've noticed, the big crosses are not working. So it's going to have to be the likes of Kent and Stewart and Morelos, by the way. With some just and Arfield in that bracket as well, with just some shorter passes to try and work better goal scoring opportunities. So that was another one that puzzled me because it just seemed to not fit the game that I was watching, pulling out what is left of my hair.
On that, Martin, then I think that we've discussed the game, and I think it's pretty fresh in people's mind. The bigger question then, of course, is mentality and what happens next. A winning mentality is, I'm afraid, only demonstrated by winning, and winning when it matters. And this Rangers team has done so. You can't say it hasn't. It has done so. It has done so in Europe. But domestically, there is a lot of failure in big games. And that's a fact. You can't dress it up as anything like that. Again, progress is definitely being made. You only need to look at 2 years ago when we turned up to play Celtic at Hampden, the difference that's happened. But there is still that gap. However, some of the things that I've read, I don't quite understand. I don't get the question, well, where do we go from here? Thursday. Yeah. It really is simple. We as fans can have a bit of an emotional temper tantrum. But, as in all aspects of life, you pick yourselves up and you go, right, tomorrow's a new day. They have a big challenge on Thursday. Won't make up for it, but I'll tell you what, if they don't achieve it, then things will get a hell of a lot worse. So the team has to refocus, has to allow itself, a bit of pain last night, but then this morning it's back into it and start getting your heads together again.
Yeah, in a kind of perverse way, if the results had turned out the way we maybe wanted them in the last round of fixtures, and this was a dead rubber, or it was just to see who wins the group, I think that might have been a real shift in terms of getting the players motivated again. There'll be enough time that will pass between Sunday afternoon and Thursday night. There's a lot riding on it. It's a completely different focus. It's a focus that we've enjoyed. It's a situation we've enjoyed, although possibly for the first time really in the group stage, first time since Leisure, really absolute pressure on getting a result. But I think it's almost the perfect game to follow this and to work that up. Another huge game on Sunday. I mean, a really difficult, different challenge. So it's a test of everyone involved in the immediate short term to show that there's no lasting impact from this disappointment, that it can be used to fuel some kind of resurgence before we go there again before the break. In terms of that winning mentality thing, I've talked about this on umpteen shows, just obviously about the past, because that's where you'll find me most of the time on this network. You know it when you see it. You know a Rangers team that's going to win a title when you see it, and it doesn't mean when they lift it. There are games that precede success where you get it that they're going to be all right, this group, and we're still waiting, I think, for this particular group, regardless of the progress that they've made. That's undeniable. But it's, you know, the kind of games we're talking about, and there's plenty of them in this month. And yet again, December, like it was last year, we're top of the table at the start of December last year. It's a tough old winter in Scotland, and it's when Smith used to come to the fore more often than not. And it's they're just different challenges in weight, and we'll see what happens. You can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, though. You know, there's a lot of good work being done, a lot of good chemistry being built. It's just being able to execute that in those key moments of the game, in those key games. And I've seen it being said, you know, the psychology of all's been overplayed. I don't think you can overplay it enough. It's huge in sport, and we're still very early in this regime. But eventually, if that is the pattern, where we're going to have the same kind of conversation that you and I have had on Seagulls Day with our EPL show and the Patreon network about assessing Mauricio Pochettino and this ability to improve a team, unquestionably improve a team, get from A to B, and we have. But for a lot of Rangers fans, B isn't enough. We want to be at C for champions and title winners. And that difference between B and C doesn't look a lot, but it's about instilling the belief and calmness within players just to do the job that they've been doing when it matters. The ability to execute the skills that you've honed and you've improved and you've got right so often at that moment, the moment you'll not get back again. And get rid of that fear and get rid of all the other energy that's in the head. That's the biggest test of the manager and this group, and it's a completely different skill set from the one that takes an utter shambles 2 years ago and makes it an awful lot better. And that's going to be interesting to see. But to answer your question, yeah, you just get back up, and yeah, Thursday's perfect.
In terms of that you spoke about, the distance A to B and B to C, it's a lot shorter distance from B to C, but it's a lot harder terrain.
Yeah.
Is probably how I'd think on it.
It's a different skill.
It is, and it's something that the manager will need to prove that he's doing. But again, I do go back to the fact that he did say he signed a 4-year deal, and he said it'll take 4 years to put Rangers back on top.
Yeah.
And we are progressing. As I say, would have been nice to have a bit of silverware as a sort of... if you like, a marker to say yes, it's definite. But I think you can see it. But again, it's just us.
Sorry to interrupt. If he did that, if we won the title this year or we won the title next year, that would be one of the most incredible achievements I've seen following Rangers, because old firm managers win cups before they win titles. That's the general rule, and they win them quickly. They don't get time. You'd have to go back to Jock Wallace for a Rangers manager to win a title for the first time inside 3 seasons, for example. It would be a huge achievement in a kind of perverse way because you'd have more time to fail. But to make that your first, I think it's very difficult, and it would be incredible if he managed to do that. For us to be able to give the time to a manager to get it wrong for so long before getting it absolutely right would be, as I said, in the kind of modern era, soonest onward, unheard of. But he does have all the goodwill in the bank still. There's a lot of belief still there, which helps. There's not going to be anyone calling for his head next summer if we still don't have anything. But if he got it right in season 3, that would buck a huge trend, not just for Rangers but Celtic as well. The pressure in this city to get it right quickly is, well, you know what it's like.
Yep, unfortunately, very true. James, then, moving on to Thursday night. Martyn's spoken about it. It's a game that Rangers really have to win for various reasons, but I think the main one is that we do need something that does just make sure the train is very much back on the tracks and going in the right direction. A concern that I have, we all know how we are feeling as fans, and we all know what it was like last night. It was brutal. But the players looked very, very upset. There were tears after the match yesterday. Now, you're a very emotional fellow, younger than me, millennial, and I'm sure that you're much more new man than I am, even though I use moisturiser and you don't. But I didn't like that. And again, that might be my hoary old traditionalist value coming through, that don't do that. Certainly not in public. Just, you lost, right? And with the best one in the world, you lost a game of football. No offence, but get your head down, get back in the tunnel, do whatever you need to do in private, and then get ready to go. I didn't really care for that.
I'm very upset that you're calling me emotional there, David. I might need to just compose myself after that. How dare you? So at the time, I'm kind of standing on the stairs at Hampden waiting to get out, and I'm looking back on the field and I'm seeing, as it Ryan Jack, feeling very upset and being consoled and whatnot. I didn't have a big issue with that at the time, because I think there's a lot of players in that team that really gave their all and didn't quite come off for them. Looking at it now, I'm maybe concerned that this happened at this stage. Now, obviously, it's quite rare to have a cup final in the middle of a season. You know, if this is a Scottish Cup final and it's the last game of the season, there is maybe a bit more of that emotional release. But there is that concern, considering they've got to get themselves back and ready for what is a very important game. Now, it's very straightforward, the scenarios here. If we win, we top the group. There's no question about that whatsoever. If we draw, we will, in all likelihood, go through in second place, unless Feyenoord get a surprise result against Porto. If we lose, we are, again, most likely out unless Feyenoord beat Porto. So it is important that we just get the job done, get the win, because top of the group makes such a difference in this scenario. And on top of that, we've had 2 games in a row where we've had poor results and we've felt deflated off the back of those games. So both the team and the fans, we need this. We need us to go out there on Thursday night, put in the performance that we know we're capable of, and listen, play like what we did on Sunday. We'll probably win the game, because 9 times out of 10, we play like that, you get a result. It's just on this occasion, in these circumstances, with the finishing and their goalkeeper being an absolute outlier, that's why we never got the job done. But carbon copy that, we'll probably get the win against Young Boys, and that will be absolutely massive in regard to our status in European football, what it means in terms of it gives us a better chance to make it to the last 16 of the Europa League. Let me repeat that. Rangers in the last 16 of the Europa League already. Remarkable progress, and we're more than capable of it. But there is pressure, because if we don't do that, and if for whatever reason circumstances prevail that mean that we do not make it out of this group, considering we're top of the group going into the last game, then there is a lot of pressure on that Motherwell game on the Sunday that we're talking about, and that would scare me. But I'm actually confident about the game against Young Boys. I think we'll win it, because I think we have more quality, and I think we saw that. It's so Rangers that the only game that we've lost was against the team that we were better than going into it. But that's always been the thing with Rangers in Europe, isn't it? It's the teams that we feel that we should beat are always the ones that seem to give us the most trouble, which might cause a little bit of concern going into it, but I still remain confident.
Martyn, am I just being a bit sort of cynical old man and need to be a wee bit more understanding of the younger generation?
In terms of the tears?
Yeah.
No,
I don't like that at all. Sorry.
Not on that pitch, not against that opposition, not when
Correct.
is still there. Nah.
Yeah. Me and Martyn are old, and we didn't cry. And if anybody had a right to cry yesterday, It was us in the stands, and we didn't.
As one gentleman, not quite as politely as you put it, he vocalised that in no uncertain terms. Yeah.
Yeah. And when it does come to questions of mentality, and as I say at the moment, it's very much Schrodinger's mentality you can take from yesterday. You can say that I've found three schools really in the main in the last 24 hours. One, they're losers. They're all useless. It's never going to change until we get rid of them. Two, we were brilliant. We were fantastic. And that's a marker. And we will take this and go on and we'll use this as a springboard. And three, which is the category I'm in, not quite sure. I don't think they're useless, but equally, I don't think a good performance is in a cup final you don't win is really worth a fuck, in all honesty. But happy to be proved wrong if Camp 2 are correct. If they don't win on Thursday, or don't go through on Thursday because they didn't get a result, then yes, mentality is going to be questioned, and I think it will resolve a lot of the Schrodinger's team performance questions.
No, you're right. As I said, people will take issue with me, I'm sure. I hope you know where I'm coming from in terms of Europe. I think Legia at home, there was a lot of pressure on that. We knew the circumstances there. We knew the game was finally poised, and away goal pretty much kills us. But look at what's at stake, and they rose to that. Morelos rose to that, as you said, literally in that case. But in the group stage of that, I think we've all felt, with the exception of maybe young boys, that everything's not big. If not quite a free hit, then close as damn it. It hasn't felt like that intense pressure that yesterday felt like the Legia felt like. Thursday will. Thursday, say what you like, you're thinking of Monaco, and you're thinking of all these ties before where, Jesus, it's going to come to this. So I think for the first time, this group within this group stage will go into a game in a slightly different environment. I think you're right, it will give us more answers that we're looking for. But they enjoy Europe though, and I even the most pressurised circumstance domestically, whether it's an Old Firm game or whether it is Pittodrie and everyone just try to get points, everything's linked to Celtic here. Everything. And that's a freedom that they'll have, even though there's pressure on to succeed and to get through. There's not the claustrophobia of Glasgow involved in that, so I think they'll be fine. But it is up a notch in terms of Europe than what they've enjoyed thus far in the group. But I'm certainly in Camp 3 with you. I think you could call the Camp 2 group the Paul McStay theory.
And the Camp 1 won the Joker. I just wish to watch the world bum theory. They're the guys that as someone who admins and follow, you never see them when things are going well, but the second things are bad, they're on there, and you just know they're the guy in the bowling club that just never plays but stands there and tells everyone else they're shite. Yeah, exactly. Really? We should organise a pessimist festival. People they wouldn't turn up. No point. Right, okay then, folks. That will do us for today here on Heart and Hand. Just like to thank our executive producer in London, Mike Lee and Paul Miles. To thank my two guests, first of all, the splendid Mr. James Forrest.
Thank you, David.
The lovely Mr. Martyn Ramsey.
Thank you, David. Thanks, James.
And just before I go, I know what it was like last night. I was in it as well. Captain Nemo, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And you can only really reflect on your own personal experience at times like this, folks. And in my life, I have fucked up with such astonishing regularity that I should be allowed to run the trains, because it was almost industrial, the level at which I fucked up. And the one thing I've learned in my life is that you can't stop and you can't let it get on top of you, and you've got to just get back up and go, right, okay, well, I'll go again. And if you keep doing that and you try to learn from what happened before and you don't make the same mistake and you keep pushing forward, then eventually you do get your reward. And that's what we need to remember. It's all still on for us. This was a sore one. Didn't decide the league, didn't decide Europe, didn't decide the Scottish Cup, certainly didn't decide next season. So have a wallow, have 24 hours, and then get yourself dusted off, get your scarf on, get to Ibrox, roll the team into the next round, and then we'll see where that takes us. And if we do that, who knows? All it takes is the next Rangers goal, and things will start to look a little bit brighter. Thanks for joining us today. Take care. Bye-bye.